Elementary music teacher friend, you love what you do, but you might feel unappreciated and, in fact, unseen some days. You may even feel like you're on a music teacher island and just want to connect with other music teachers who can relate to both your struggles and wins when it comes to teaching elementary music. I get you and understand completely the feelings you're having. That's why each and every week, the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast will provide you with solo and guest episodes that will help you realize you're not alone in your music teaching journey. Throughout each episode, my goal is for you to be able to walk away with actionable steps and ideas to help you feel like you're ready to take on the new week with whatever challenges may be thrown your way. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Peresta, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're at home, in your car, in the shower, or wherever else you're listening, grab your cup of coffee or whatever other beverage is nearby and listen in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Well, hey there, friend. Welcome back to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Today's episode is about trusting your intuition. This is an episode that has been on my heart for a while to record, and once I started taking notes about what I want to say in this episode, it just flowed out of me like I do in a blog post. It just kept coming out, and I have so much to share with you about this topic, and I'm really excited about it. So there's a few reasons I wanted to record this episode. Part of it is over social media, especially the last few years, there's been a lot of teacher advice, suggestions, tips, strategies, posts about what's going on in classrooms, different video snippets, reels, all the things. And so it's a lot more than ever before. And social media is not a bad thing. I'm on social media. I think, honestly, it was created to be social. But I've seen the tides shifting and turning a little bit lately where it has been a lot more competitive, or even if it's not meant to be that way, it has caused a lot of feelings of overwhelm based on what you might be seeing or listening to or viewing or whatever that is causing you to maybe feel stuck. I really am blown away at the amount of mentors that are available online. It's incredible. You can literally just with a click of a button see a post, share a post, save a post, and go back to it later and have so many great ideas about various topics. And there's truly so much advice given and teachers willing to share ideas for free, just out of the goodness and kindness of their hearts. And I want you to listen to advice. I want you to have mentors. I want you to have professional development opportunities, which I completely think professional development, yes, is about workshops. I offer workshops. I offer challenges. This podcast is professional development, but I also think you can get professional development by conversations on social media. Instagram is where I like to hang out the most, or professional development by asking questions from other teachers, or by even just viewing content and saving it to go back to later. I do totally think that can be professional development. But here's where this episode, the reason I'm wanting to record it came from. At some point, you need to realize that you have an intuition. You can trust yourself that you have what it takes to teach music to your students. I want you to open your Instagram and look at the amount of saved posts you have there. That alone, if you are anything like me, I do that all the time. I'll save posts and go back to them. But I want you to let's look at one of the save posts you have. And maybe you're like, I don't save posts on Instagram, and that's okay. Look at your inbox, maybe look at your Facebook, or look at your bookmarks folder on your computer. And I want you to look there at something you have saved, whether it's a post, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a podcast episode to go back to later, or whatever it might be. And then I want you to look at, like I said, pick one. And then I want you to see how long has it been there. The reason I'm having you do this is because what happens a lot in our lives is you will save a post to go back to later, save an article, save a whatever I just mentioned. But a lot of times you maybe don't go back to it later, or what happens is you will just continue to view that content, to read that article, to listen to an episode, to watch a Facebook Live or whatever it might be. But here's where the intuition comes into play. Once you have saved, viewed, listened to that thing, are you ever applying it? Are you ever actually taking what you learned and then implementing it into your teaching life? If not, this is not me sitting here recording this, making you feel bad about yourself. That is never my goal on any of these episodes on this podcast. But what I'm trying to get at is sometimes you really do need to trust that you have what it takes to keep moving forward. All of the trainings and the podcast episodes, the workshops, you have learned skills. They have equipped you and given you what you already need. So go through the pages of notes or the ideas you have and then actually begin implementing them in whatever way that looks like for you. I would just pick an idea and start with that. You have intuition for a reason, and I want to go into quickly what the definition of intuition is. If you type intuition in on Google, you will see this definition I'm about to read. The ability to know something without analytical reasoning, bridging the gap between the conscious and non-conscious parts of our mind. What exactly does that mean? I'm going to break it down a little bit into Jessica terms. Means a lot of times you already know what you need to do when it comes to teaching a lesson, when it comes to implementing a certain classroom management strategy, when it comes to assessing your students, when it comes to planning virtual ideas, when it comes to putting on performances, and so on and so forth. You listen to advice, but when it comes to implementing it, that's where your intuition comes into play. It is, okay, I heard advice around teaching a lesson, teaching a certain song, doing a certain activity, and I've learned what to do, but I'm going to trust my intuition to know that I have what it takes to teach and actually implement this lesson for my students. I may need to change up a few steps in order to reach my students where they're at. I may need to adapt the movement activity a little bit. I may not have those instruments that lesson plan listed, but I'm going to do body percussion or these instruments instead. You have what it takes to do that, to break down a lesson plan and then to pretty much recreate it into what you need to do, your teaching style, your students' teaching situation, and how you want to implement it. And that's all where intuition comes into play. So let's break it down even more. So if you're teaching a lesson, but maybe in the middle of the lesson, you don't feel right about it. You just don't feel like it's going well. You don't feel like it is being implemented the way that you saw the teacher who gave you the idea implement it. That's your intuition. So listen to it and process through that and maybe write down ideas about why is it not going well. Let your intuition guide you. When you have great ideas or something sparks an interest in you, that's your intuition coming into play. All of a sudden you maybe hear a song on the radio or you see a picture book and you're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I could totally turn this into a lesson for my students. Then do it. Let your intuition guide you. Obviously, you had that thought or idea for a reason. When you slow down enough, whether it's in the shower, maybe while you're driving. I know I have a lot of time in the car when I'm not with my kids. Let me be honest. I have 3 boys, so it's a lot quieter when I'm driving alone. Or even when your head hits the pillow at night, you're able to finally hear your thoughts. It's clear, it's quiet. Let your intuition guide decisions. I know a lot of times the greatest ideas I have is when it's quiet, when I silence the noise around me and I'm able to finally have some thoughts that I'm able to jot down ideas. So when you do hear advice, that advice is great. I mean, hello, I have a whole podcast here where I'm offering advice, whether it's by myself with guests or whatever. I have a membership site where I'm constantly offering advice in my Harmony membership. I am constantly guiding teachers in workshops and things. I give advice. But I am so big on, and this is what I constantly tell my Harmony members, those lesson plans I provide, take them, but you do not have to follow them step by step because I completely understand that every single music teacher, you have your own unique giftings and personality and teaching style and musical background and students and schools and all the other things that go into play that you have what it takes to be able to look at a plan and make it your own. So when you hear advice, I want you to do that. I want you to hear the advice, use your internal lens to go, this advice is great, but I like this part of the advice I heard, but I'm going to do this instead. You are not going to be offending the person who gave you advice. And if you are, then that's on them. Let that go. Let that go. That has nothing to do with you. So take the advice and make it your own. Don't just hear ideas and then just sit with them. But I want you to really think of how you can make it work for you and your students. Maybe you also feel stuck at times because you feel like you're going to make a mistake. If you do try to realign a lesson plan to make it your own. Maybe you feel like you're going to get criticism on social media if you post a lesson plan idea. Maybe you feel like you aren't doing things as good as other music teachers. This is what I mean by listening to your intuition. Trust your gut. Trust that you have what it takes, and trust that you're in your teaching situation for a reason. You were hired for your exact position for a reason. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. So I want to also pivot a little bit to say that, of course, you're doubting yourself from time to time. That's normal. But when we were talking about social media earlier, it's easy to doubt yourself a lot because when you are seeing those perfectly curated lesson plans, or you're hearing the I never have any behavior issues in my classroom, or you're seeing posts saying something like, if you're teaching this song, it has to be done this way. I'm just using these as a few examples because these are things I've even seen just this week. It doesn't mean that person's advice is wrong, but it's also their experience. So if you're doubting yourself just because you've seen a certain post, then let that go. Let those expectations you've put on yourself go, because all it is a social media post. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that person's advice isn't great, but it also, they don't know your experience. They don't know you in real life, in the situations you're dealing with and the students you're teaching. I honestly, I know this is going to make me sound like a dinosaur, but that's okay. I miss the days of teaching when social media wasn't even around. Because let me give you a little glimpse into, like, my first year teaching was 2004. So social media wasn't really around. I think Facebook had just come out, or it was at the point where it was literally just people sharing about what they had for dinner and random things. But the way, if you wanted to talk to another music teacher, it was at a workshop, or it was through email. Pretty much that was it. And I miss those days because you didn't really know what anyone else was doing. So it was easy to just focus on moving forward the way you needed to for your students. Then, if you felt like you needed advice, that's usually when I would shoot an email to another music teacher in my district. Most of the time, though, I just stayed in my lane and did my thing. Did I feel overwhelmed a lot? Yeah, because if you've heard this podcast for any amount of time, you know I had to figure out things as I went along because of my teaching situation. But it was an easier time. Of course, there was no teaching during a pandemic. There was no, every single person in the world had an Instagram account. It just was easier. So the overwhelm that I see a lot of teachers experiencing, and when I'm doing music teacher coaching, whether it is one-on-one or in my membership site, a lot of what I hear is, I'm overwhelmed because this person posted this and I can't do it that way. It's a lot of times just comparing what you're doing to someone you don't even know in real life, and you don't know behind the scenes how many times they had to stop that activity to redo it because their kids weren't focused or listening, or how many interruptions they had during that class time, or are they really implementing the lesson the way they say they are, or did they just create an amazing social media post? You don't know. You're comparing yourself, let's be honest, to a stranger. So let those expectations go if you felt yourself doing that a lot. So not all social media is bad. But at the same time, maybe you've heard or seen posts just like this. Sell your teaching products on Teachers Pay Teachers. Oh, wait, but don't do it that way. Teach your students music. Oh, but not like that. Don't do it that way. Don't do it that way. Do it this way. This way is the best. Or plan effective lessons, but don't plan it like that. Plan it like this. Put this in your lesson plans, not that. Or even, oh, mentor other teachers. They need to hear your advice, but why are you teaching them that way? These are, I mean, gosh, I could have inserted like 26 other phrases there because there's so much. Is this not that? Do this, not that. Do this, not that. Over and over and over and over. And when repeated over and over, you start doubting yourself. You start believing that you're not good enough. You start hearing all this advice and all of a sudden you're going in with confidence and your confidence is waning because you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not measuring up. But what I do want you to hear me say is when I was in the classroom, I did things my way. Now I'm running a full-fledged music education business where I get to cater and mentor teachers all over the world, and I'm still doing things my way. Do I hear negative comments? Yes. Do I hear I should do things differently? Yes. Do I hear all the things that you could ever imagine? Yeah. But I trust my intuition, and my intuition is telling me to keep going because I know who I'm serving. You keep going because you know who you're serving, which is your students. That is your biggest goal, is serving those students. Trust your intuition. Trust when it's time to pivot. Trust when it's time to introduce something new. Trust when it's okay to change up a lesson plan. Trust that you are there teaching your kids, not this other teacher who's giving you advice. You are. So trust the intuition you have that you have what it takes. All the advice is great, but sometimes you have to just step into your calling and know that you're teaching, you're creating content, if you are creating content for other teachers, and you're living the way you're meant to. I have mentors. Of course I do. I listen to them. I have people giving me advice all the time. I need that advice. I need mentorship, just like I know you do. I do listen to advice. I think it's so important to hear advice. But at the same time, I've learned to filter advice through the lens of what aligns with my goals, my mission, and my ideas. So, if scrolling your Instagram feed, and I know I'm using Instagram as an example, maybe you're not big on Instagram, maybe it's Twitter for you, maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's, I don't know, even LinkedIn or whatever else it might be. But if it's causing you to feel a certain way, then take a break from it for a while. I do that. Sometimes I'll make a post on Instagram, but I don't even go and scroll the feed for a couple days just because I just don't need to sometimes. Other times, I want to go support other people's work and what they're doing. I want to go see what other music teachers are doing, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just need to stay focused on my vision, my goals, what I'm doing, because the same advice I'm giving to you, I can feel stuck sometimes when I see someone else's post like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not doing a good enough job. So if that is the case for you and you keep seeing these posts, or maybe it's not even anybody posting anything negative. It's a positive post, but it's making you feel a certain way. Then get off of social media for a while. Take a break. Notice how much clarity it gives you, how much it helps you focus on yourself, helps you focus on the intuition that you have as a teacher, where you're not just constantly hearing advice being given to you, but you're taking your own advice. And then going back to the beginning of this episode, you're taking the advice you've already probably saved or heard or taken notes about. Start looking through that stuff before you start hearing new advice. Go through stuff you already have available to you and start thinking of ways you can implement those ideas. When you've taken notes upon notes upon notes about notes upon notes, about implementing something into your classroom, but you haven't actually tried the thing the training was about, trust your intuition about how you need to implement that for your kids. If you know you've already gotten what you needed out of a certain training, then don't go to another one about that topic for a while. And that's okay. Because if you think it's going to cause you more overwhelm, then just don't do it. Whether you realize it or not, teaching can feel like a rat race. It is competitive, unfortunately, especially in the social media day and age we live in. For some reason, it is, gosh, the comments, I see more negative comments than I see positive ones. We should be supporting and lifting each other up more than ever. But who are you really competing against? And what's the point of that? What's the point of it? Honestly, what is the actual point of that? Are you going to win a prize if you are the winner of teaching that lesson? Are you going to be, getting a gold medal? No, like there's no point to it. So if you don't teach a lesson the same way as another teacher, does it really matter that much in the scheme of things? Does it matter? Do you even have to share with anyone that you taught that lesson differently than the person who shared it with you? No. Who cares? Just do it for your students. You don't have to even talk to anyone else about how the fact that you taught that lesson, whether it went well or not. Just process it on your own. Listen to your intuition about why did it go well. Listen to your intuition about what could have gone better, and then move forward from that. Maybe you're being too hard on yourself because of things I've mentioned throughout this episode. Have you forgotten all the excitement you felt bringing your own personality, background, and ideas to your students at your unique school? If so, next time maybe you feel fear, doubt, or any other negative emotion creeping in, trust your intuition and that you have what it takes to teach music. You are needed in this community. We need your voice. We need your teaching. We need you to be in there, in the grind every day, teaching music to your students, whether you talk about it on social media or not. So I want you to trust your intuition. I want you to trust that you have what it takes. And I want you to know that I know it's hard. I know that it is extremely hard. You're bombarded with not only information from your administration, but from your school district. You're constantly having to pivot the way you teach. And on top of that you're overwhelmed, wondering all the time if you're doing things right. Trust your intuition, friend, because I know that you have what it takes. And I'm so pumped to hear about what you're doing with your students. If you want to share with me on social media. Remember, we already talked about taking that break. So if you need to do that, don't worry about talking to me about what you're doing with your students. But if you would like to, I would love for you to screenshot this episode and tag me on Instagram at Jessica Peresta and let me know your thoughts about what we talked about today. And ask me any questions. If you need support or you need ideas or you just need some encouragement, just let me know. And I would love to send some your way. Have an amazing day, friends, and never forget the impact you're making in the lives of your students. Well, hey there. Thank you so much for listening into the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. There is an exclusive Facebook group just for listeners of this podcast and any elementary music teacher called the Elementary Music Teacher Community Facebook group. Come on over and join us there where we have conversations around the podcast episodes and encourage each other each and every week. And also head to my website, thedomesticmusician.com. I have some free resources there that you can download to help you gain traction in your classroom today, as well as the blog and the membership site and all kinds of other goodies to help you keep going in your music teaching journey. I cannot wait to keep connecting with you and encouraging you and spurring you on in your journey of teaching elementary music. Hang in there, have an amazing week, and I will see you soon.